So people have been sending me in questions. If you guys have any that you come to mind, feel free to put it into chat. This will be recorded, so I'm gonna get started so I can try to answer as many questions as possible. And as a recap, our current deal is called Sunrise on Chandler. 177 units. We're expecting a 14. Let me write that down. Sunrise on Chandler. 177 units. Built in 1985. We're expecting IRR 14 to 16%. IRR. Net, meaning after fees. Equity multiple of 1.8 to 2x. Meaning it's 1.8 to 2 times your money, and then cash on cash in the first year of 3 to 5.5%. And then we could dig into all these numbers if people are interested. What else can I tell you? Debt service coverage ratio, 1.61. That means how much money we make compared to how much debt we have. We're gonna get an interest rate loan, so loan of about 5.8 to 6%, 6-ish, and it's fixed for 5 years. So if you saw my last Ascent live, you'll know why it's so important for fixed rate loan. And so this is the deal. And please, if you have any questions, either jump on video or audio, and then or just put it into the chat. So I'll keep an eye on that. But I'm gonna go through some of the questions that people have sent me. And I'd like to start actually with the story, right? Because almost always it has to come from somewhere, right? Because that sounds like a pretty good deal. So the question is, why is someone giving it up? And so the story is in 2021, this big bank, NY Bank, with a lot of money, probably too much money. Well, less money now, but you'll hear why. They had too much money at the time, and they bought this property, Sunrise, and then they switched the name to Sunrise on Chandler, right? So the property's great. They started off the rents. They started off for one of the units, $925. They were able to renovate and make it $1,700. Big jump, right? So everything was peachy. The New York bank, though, made one mistake. Well, one very large mistake. They told Sunrise, who's the operator, they said, we want a variable loan. And typically, when you bring the money to the table, you have what is called major decision rights. And we always have these in our deals called major decision rights, which means you get to decide on basically everything that's important in the deal. And so they told Sunrise, we want a variable rate loan, right? Because in 2020, 2021, 2022, up to mid 2022, that Fed interest rates were 0%, right? And so even if you had a variable loan, your interest rate would be like 3%, right? So, and fixed loans would be like 5%. Why would you pay this extra money when the Fed's rate is 0%? Now we know that's not 0% anymore, right? It's 5.5%. So what happened to this 3% loan? It became 8.5 to 9%, right? So that's first mistake. And I talked about this a little bit last time. Second mistake, they got a ton of leverage. So they had a senior loan of like, it's like 65%. And they put a second loan called mezzanine. I'm sorry, there's construction next door. So you might hear a chainsaw. And they got up to 90% leverage. So basically all this extra money that they were making, from renovations just went to paying these loans. And eventually they were not able to pay it. And they actually went into the negatives. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a loan at 60% fixed. 60%. We're also, so they bought the all in the property for 60 million. Their loan is for 50 million. We're buying the property for 46 and a half. So not only are, unfortunately, they're losing all of their money, but the lender is losing a little bit of money too, and that's actually very rare. So we're getting it for a big discount, and that's why we are actually able to cash flow on day one because our basis, our purchase price is so much lower. It's like if you bought a house for $10 compared to $100, right? Your monthly payments are going to be way less, and that means way more money in your pocket, right? So the bank had the option foreclosure, right? Which looks very bad on your books because no one's going to give you another loan in the future. And or basically give us the property, right? Obviously, there's a little bit of fees and such. And we, because we have such a great relationship with Sunrise, they actually brought this opportunity to us, and they're running it extremely efficiently. One of the we like looking at two numbers. Of course, we look at a lot more, but two numbers that are really important to us are occupancy and bad debt. So we all know occupancy, right? How many butts are in beds, right? 97%. So that means 97% of the units are occupied. But the other thing that is very important is bad debt, because what can you do? And this is what sellers will do before they sell a property. If they put people in and maybe don't pass the credit check, or maybe have been late on a couple things because they don't care, right? Someone else is going to take over the property. So you want to look at these things coupled together. So you want high occupancy and you want low bad debt. The bad debt on this property is basically zero. Some months it's literally zero. Other months it's a couple $1,000. So the fact that occupancy is really high, people are in there, and bad debt is low, meaning they're paying what they owe, right? Evictions are zero and such. So that means the properties run extremely well, and we're happy to keep Sunrise in the deal. So that's how we got this opportunity, by our relationship with Sunrise and this bank being a little bit too greedy. Now, they're probably pretty smart people at this bank. So people have asked me, why would a bank do that? Now, think about an actual portfolio. If you have billions of dollars to deploy, you're willing to take a couple gambles. And that's what they did. That's what they did with this deal. It was a gamble. And had the economy behaved, probably would have went out like bandits. They would have made a fortune. But right, we can't predict what's going to happen. And sometimes you take a loss. But if you have billions of dollars that you're willing, but they probably have other deals that are much lower risk, and it kind of rounds things out. And that's why it's nice to have a large portfolio. And this deal actually might make sense for some people. For us, which we don't have billions to deploy, and we're hardworking physicians, I don't want to lose any money, right? And that's why the purchase price is so important, and getting fixed debt. We're taking really the largest thing off the picture. So that's kind of how that deal came to us. And this is the first multifamily deal we're doing since August 2023. So and August 2023 was the only deal we did in all of 2023 because there's just not that many good opportunities. And the last deal was with Sunrise. For those of you that are in Cabana and Kanto, that deal is doing very well. It's like 95% occupied. We do monthly distributions. So we leaped at the opportunity to work with Sunrise again. So that's kind of the basics of how we got the deal. And I think the story is really important because there's a lot of opportunities out there. And for me, it's really important that we pick the right one, right? For most of us, we're not investing in like, you know, 10, 20 deals a year. So we have to be really careful with the types of deals that we invest in. So let's talk about, let's see. Gonna take a look to see if there's any questions. Let's see. What else can we talk about? What else have people asked me? Oh, cash on cash. So cash on cash. I think this is extremely important. So, and the nice thing is this is the easiest number to calculate, right? If I put in $10, and in a year I get $1, then 1 divided by 10, that's 10% cash on cash, right? So what we're saying is that if you put in 100,000 in the first year, we're going to get you, let's say, roughly around 4%. So about $4,000, right? Now, a couple cool things. One, because of depreciation, depreciation is a paper loss. The government says that anytime you have something that's physical, over time, it's going to be worth less than it was when you bought it, right? So think about a car. You take a car off a dealership lot, you already lost 20% of value, right? Or you buy a designer something, right? Once you put it on, it's going to be worth less than what you paid for, typically. So because of depreciation, in the first year of that $100,000 investment, we're going to say, and it gets a little complicated. It's, you're able to usually depreciation is over 27 and a half years, but because of all this, because the government is run by real estate owners, real estate is very favorably taxed. So instead of 27 and a half years, you're able to accelerate your depreciation. And there's something called bonus depreciation. So in the first year of that $100,000 investment, you will get a negative 30 to 50,000, right? Some people freak out when they see their K1 because it'll be like negative 40,000, right? We didn't get a loss, it's just a paper loss that we were able to get. So if we give you that $4,000 over the course of a year, paid monthly, then next year it's going to be 36,000, right? Because it gets added on. So this is our kind of cash on cash. So I've had people ask me, hey, Pranay, I see another property. It gives me 6%, 7%, right? And what I have seen happen is that people will overraise. That means if they buy, like for us, we're buying the property for 46 and a half, right? And that's the purchase price. We need to raise closing costs like 2 million, and we need to do capital X, so renovations like 3 million. Other people will just add on, right? Let's add another 3 million on, right? And they'll call it reserves. So what happens is that instead of 4%, out of this reserve, I'll bump this up to 6 so that it looks like you're getting a lot of cash back. But what you're actually getting is your own money back. And some people love it, but remember, you're adding on to the price. So that means the higher that I add this all together, the more I need to, let's say 56, the more I need to sell the property for. So we think we only want to give you cash on cash based on how much the property makes on a monthly basis. And that's why actually on some of our other properties, people will be like, hey, I got $200 this month, or I got $150, and last month I got $200 because we take the money, and it's it's not going to be even like this. It'll be 4,167 or something, right? Because we give our returns, our cash on cash, based on actual operations, based on the money we're collecting in rent, and not back from the money that we collected from you, right? Because that is increasing our risk. It means we have to sell the property for a lot more than we were expecting to. And it feels nice right now, right, to get a big check from us every month. But remember, when you're buying a property, the first year you should be getting the least amount of money, right? Because we have to do renovations, we have to do all this stuff. This property actually, the takeover is going to be a minimal cost because Sunrise is the same people that are running it, the same property manager. So the big benefit on this deal is that the takeover costs are basically zero. And they also know where all the skeletons are hidden because almost always when we take over a property, as soon as the first year hits, right? So 1 year after a property, we have a ton of evictions because, like I mentioned, the seller will just let anyone in at the end. They stop caring, right? They're not going to be as strict. They don't want to pay the asset managers any, or sorry, the property managers any bonuses or anything like that. So they're going to be very lax because they're just concerned about selling the property. So the there's always evictions, but here they're already running it very well. And I've looked at the property, and it's beautiful on the outside. And the renovated units are beautiful. And only 11% of it is renovated. So roughly like 80 or something. Uh, because the they ran out of money. And I call the unrenovated units, I call it cabin chic because it's the really old 80s brown cabinets everywhere. Everything's brown. There's brown carpet. There is black appliances. It really feels like you're in a cabin. So there's just so much opportunity to renovate or what we call value add to increase the income that we're getting. And anywhere from pre-acquisition to 925 to like 1700. And so there's a lot of opportunity right there by renovating these units. And we already have a contractor. So this will be our third property in the area. And we have a contractor that we trust and love. For any of you that have tried to do your home renovations, contractors are like impossible to find. And he can do anywhere from 6 to 10 renovations in a month. They're like turbo speed. So we can actually renovate the whole thing in like 2 years. We're not going to do that because we want to do it short and really see how the market goes, right? And kind of uh take a pulse on the market. But as of right now, people are loving the renovated units. And so yeah, we're gonna start, and they haven't renovated things in like almost a year. So there's just so much opportunity there. And when I visited the property, I forgot the name, but when you go on Google Maps, it's directly across the street. The rents are like $100 cheaper, so it's like 1,600. But oh man, it's hideous. Hideous. Their highest renovation scope is hideous. It's like those it feels like you're in like it has it's not the open kitchen. It has the really high like kitchen kitchen. It's not quartz. It's just really ugly. But they're 97% occupied as well, right? So they have no reason. And the pool at that place is like the size of this room. It's tiny. So the you guys have seen the deck, the pool and the barbecue area at Sunrise on Chandler is beautiful. So all the exterior stuff is done. What we're gonna do is all the interior. The clubhouse is really old right now. So we're gonna renovate that. And the current gym is like the size of this room as well. So we're gonna expand that, add a bunch of machines to just make it nicer. I think a gym these days, a home or like an apartment gym is a necessity. Add in a bunch of treadmills and just kind of a cool area for people to work out. And I think by doing that, you also encourage people to stay longer. Okay, looks like I have a couple. Yeah. Okay. So Kim is asking about us investing in the deal. So we actually there's a ton of random costs in doing this, right? So for example, we had to pay a bunch of fees to the current owner, even though they're going to lose all their money. There's still some fees that we had to cover on their part to let them take over the property. We have to pay fees to the lender to title insurance. So we actually have over $1 million, 1 million in this deal already before we even got started. And then we're probably going to invest, I'd say 50 to 100,000 each on top of this $1 million. So we're definitely going to invest. And then also, you know who's going to be on the loan? Renee. So we don't have other people sign our loans. We are signing on it. So we have ton of skin in the game. And it's actually pretty rare. I really don't know any other doctors that are signing on loans for the properties that they buy. But I mean, talk about conviction, right? So it's Pranay Myth, Peter, and then Sunrise, of course. They're the operator. They're right. They typically sign on the loan, but all three of us are on the loan as well. So I think that's a big differentiating factor between us, and we feel strongly about our deals and are willing to put our names on it because we really believe in them. And we also wouldn't put our names on something that we think has a chance of doing poorly. But we're also doing very conservative debt, right? Fixed, let's say low sixes interest rate. Uh, Agency, right? So agency, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. And these are from the government, right? So not everyone qualifies for these types of loans. And you have to be what is called stabilized. So meaning they don't want to invest in something that they think is risky. So, we're 97% occupied. Stabilization is anywhere from 90 to 95%. And you have to have done it for at least 6 months. So we definitely meet that criteria. So not everyone qualifies for these loans. That's why you'll see some people get into variable rate loans. But we like these kind of loans. It's the best rate typically. And it's also you have kind of the backing of the government, which is nice. Yeah. Okay. Uh, yeah. So John asked about who were the investors in the deal. So you might have missed the first little part. It was a New York bank. I won't go through the whole thing again. They got leverage up to their ears, about 90%. It was a variable rate loan, and they just weren't able to cover the debt. And so you can see if you look at the T12, you can see that they were negative in terms of the NOI. And immediately we're turning positive because we're bringing so much more equity to the table, and the we have a fixed rate loan. So I mentioned that we have $1 million into this deal. We are also putting in money as well. In terms of acquisition fees, there are a lot of costs for us to take over this property. Because this is actually, some people mentioned that this is a recap. What a recap is when you take the existing deal and you bring in new money. But the existing equity, the New York bank, they're getting wiped out. So this is a completely new deal. We actually tried. We tried to see if we could do a recap because there's so much less in terms of costs. You can use the same LLC. You can do all this stuff. However, and this is you don't really realize this until you're in the industry. The reason that we couldn't do it and we didn't want to do it is because we wouldn't get the depreciation. So you have to do a sale to get the depreciation again. If you do a recap, all the depreciation just goes to the current owner. They really wanted us to do a recap because they didn't want to do what is called depreciation recapture. So if you use all the depreciation, even if you have a loss in money, you actually have to pay that percentage back. But we didn't think it would be fair to our investors if we didn't give them the depreciation for the property. So there's a ton of costs involved in that, and that's kind of where the acquisition fee goes to. Uh, Okay, so Connie asked a great question about competition. So, um, there is going to be in the Phoenix area, there is going to be a lot of new buildings being built. So, in the plentiful times of 2020, 2021, we had basically free money, right? That rate was 0. And when you have and are able to get money for so cheap, you want to put it into something that gives you as much value as possible, right? So what did a lot of these companies do? They're like, shoot, my development costs are super low. Let's build. And again, and it almost seems funny at the time, but everyone was moving to Phoenix or Austin or all of these places, right? Remote work, no one's going to office again, no one's going to do any of this, right? So people saw the demand, right? Demand shot up, right? In Phoenix, I think 2020, either 2020 or 2021, rents went up 25% in a year. In a year. So developers also saw that and decided to build, right? So a usual development cycle is 3 years, right? So if they were building, right, in 2020, so let's say 3 to 5 years. So that means in 2023, I forgot it's 2023, 2025, there's going to be a ton of new stuff that's coming live, right? That is now. However, the city of Chandler is notoriously difficult to build in. Notoriously difficult. So something like Goodyear, where our last property is like it's like 1,500 units, 1,500 to 2,000 units that are coming live, right? And that was a concern for our last property. That's why it was nice that we got such a big discount on it, right? Compared to what some of these other things are going to be built. However, the city of Chandler, there's going to be like one building in the next couple years. And so I said people were building in 2020, 2021, right? Right now, so there's going to be like one new thing that's going to come live in the next couple years. However, 2023 to 2025, there's very few new things. If you look at the graph, and we had this in our deck, there's almost zero new permits. And there's a couple reasons why. One, construction costs. So I was talking to someone recently, and they were offered a construction loan 18%. 18%. Now remember, you're not making any money during construction. So you actually have to bring in all the money for the interest you're going to pay with you, right? And if you don't refi within 3 years, that rate actually goes up, right? So construction loans, super expensive. Two, no one wants to give construction loans, right? Because they're so risky. Who gives construction loans? It's local banks. And local banks, like now they've stabilized a little bit, but for a while they were worried about all failing. So they don't want to give any risky loans, right? They prefer to give loans to people like us that are buying something that's already standing. And here is something that's unique to Phoenix. The Phoenix government passed a law that said you have to prove that you have 100 years worth of water at your property before we will give you a permit. So basically, that is zero people. Now, someone's going to find a way to prove that and map that out, but it's caused most people not to want a permit and to really just focus on building the stuff that's already going to be built because they get grandfathered in. but highly unlikely anything new is going to be built. So that's why we love Chandler, because we are kind of protected. We have a monopoly in the area. And there's actually a new building called Alta. Surprisingly, it's actually owned by a friend of mine. And I went to go see it. It's beautiful. But a two bedroom, which is beautiful. Like it's like something that like a young family or like a doctor would want to live in, right? Starts at 2,500 to 4,200. And these are like the sucky ones. So when ours is two bedrooms for 1,700, that delta is humongous, right? So that's why we like it. It's supply constrained, right? Supply constrained because of the city of Chandler. And there's just not that much space. And if you look at Google Maps, putting Sunrise on Chandler, you'll see there's just not that much area. So Goodyear, where our last property was, there's just a ton of space, right? And that's why we were concerned for a lot of new builds. Fortunately, we got it for such a discount that we'll be able to kind of ride it out. And our property is brand new as well. But if you look at the Chandler, there's just very little right there to compare. And like the cool thing is, there's a bunch of like breweries, right? I always look for like, are there stuff to do around that area, right? Breweries, independent coffee shops. I hope you all don't drink coffee at Starbucks anymore, because there's so much better coffee out there. You know what? Actually, I didn't drink coffee. I got through med school. I got through residency. I got through everything, and then I had two kids, and now I can't survive without. But independent coffee shops, right? The breweries, literally on the corner of Sunrise's Chandler is these jerks. Actually, no, they're friends of ours because they don't let other people build stuff. The city hall and the police station. So there's like zero crime at this place because it's like just around the block from the police station. So, one of the big things that we really want and look at our properties, like we want it to be super safe. So if we could, this being so close to the police station, just decrease this crime, right? There's like a little surrounding area where people are like, shoot, like literally a cop is probably passing by, so I don't want to do it. It's gated, it's covered parking. So it just makes us really like this area. And the big thing is supply constraint, because what you're going to see, and you'll see this when you're looking at Dallas, like if you live in Dallas, you can't look in a direction and not see a ton of cranes. And they're going to have the biggest new supply, which over time it should be okay because we need a lot more housing, but you know, over time could be relative and it could be longer than your investment. So, we have 5 years to uh hold on to this property. But we like it. So let's see, what else do we got? Okay. So that's from Connie. Another question I had that was great was cap rates. So I will try to do this in a way that doesn't bore you, but it does have some numbers. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about it uh figuratively first, and then we'll put in some numbers, okay? But cap rates are very important. Cap rates. Kind of here it is. So cap rates is NOI divided by purchase price. Right? Purchase price. Okay, so the way to look at this is how much am I willing to pay for $1 of income is worth X, right? So I talked about this a little bit last week. So if I am buying $1 of rental income in LA, I'm going to pay a lot more for it than $1 of rental income in Detroit, right? That makes sense to us, right? So when you're buying a property, you want to say, yeah, that dollar of income, that sucks. It's like Detroit, right? It's not worth that much. So I want my purchase price to be low, right? So I want my NOI to be high and my purchase price to be low. So what does that cause the cap rate? Uh, it is makes it look high cap rate, right? So when I buy, I want to get a lot of income or very little, right? I want to buy at a high cap rate. And current people are buying at a 5.3% cap rate, right? So the absolute value of that doesn't matter. So the question is, what are we buying at? So we are buying it at a 6 cap. So we are buying it for a higher cap rate, meaning that the value of we are valuing a dollar of income less than what other people are. So that means we're getting a good value, right? Now, when you sell the property, now I'll talk about what you want versus what you're projecting, right? So when you sell the property, you want a low cap rate, meaning you want to sell, you want to have low NOI, right? Meaning people are okay with less money, but are paying more for it. What? Purchase price. So you want to sell it at like a 4, right? Or a 3, right? So an easy way to manipulate the numbers is by putting an artificially low cap rate, right? So if you say, hey, we think people are going to value a dollar of income a lot more when we sell the property than they do right now, you're basically saying the economy is going to improve a ton, right? And you could do nothing to the property, literally not touch it at all, and say that people are going to value it a lot more, right? So this is something that you want to take a look at, right? So usually we'll have some expansion, meaning that when we buy a property, right, we'll say the cap rate will actually go a little bit up when we buy the property, right? So it gives us a buffer. Now, that is a rule of thumb, right? And the problem with that is that if you are at the bottom of the market or close to the bottom, which Blackstone last week just spent 10 billion on multifamily because they think we're at the bottom. If you put in an expansion, meaning the cap rate's going to be higher when you sell the property, literally no properties will make sense. So what we did was we said, we're buying it at a 6, but it's actually a 5.3, which is what everyone else is buying it at. We're going to sell at a 5.5. So yes, we do think the economy is going to get better, but we have 5 years to get that. And actually, if people are buying it at a 5.3 and we say we're going to sell at a 5.5, we are actually saying that the economy is going to get worse from now. So I think we're in a lot of trouble if 5 years from now the economy is worse, because that means that interest rates are high. There's going to be more unemployment, a lot of that. But we're saying, yeah, it's actually going to be a little bit worse than what we're buying right now. But we got such a good deal. It's really hard to say that for the deal we got, that things are going to get even worse than the deal we got. So that's why there's slight compression. The cap rate is getting a little bit smaller, but compared to actuality, it is actually getting a little bit worse. We are modeling the market to be a little bit worse. However, if you look in our slides, we actually model it at a 6. So at the cap rate, and I think you'd get like a 12% IRR, and we modeled it at a 6.25. And it's like an 11% IRR. So still in the positives, but we actually think the economy is going to improve slightly. And the Fed said they're going to decrease interest rates, right? Three times, I think that's overly generous. I think they probably drop rates 25 basis points twice. But obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. But I think they drop it probably 25 times two, so 50. But that automatically, there's almost a direct correlation with dropping interest rates and dropping the cap rates. So that alone, and that's this year. We have 5 years to get to this point. So I think that alone will improve the cap rates. And so always remember the time that no one wants to invest is typically the best time to invest. When was the best time that you can think of to invest in real estate? Probably 2008, 2009. I can tell you the last thing I was thinking about at the time was investing in real estate. I was also in high school, but had I had a chance to invest in real estate, I wouldn't have been thinking of it, right? And so the people that did that are doing very well, right? They're killing it. So I think that is the opportunity we have, you know? So in the deck, I had kind of the the real estate cycle, right? So we were kind of up here, right? In 2022, kind of peak prices, best time to sell, and then slowly start getting best to the best time. And it's really hard to get the bottom, right? If you get anywhere down here where it's a good time to buy, then I think it's going to be an opportunity. And remember, when rates drop, people are going to rush in to buy real estate. So actually one of the best times to buy is right before rate drops because once the interest rate goes down, right, people's purchase prices are going to go up. And that's going to increase your value almost immediately. So it's going to drop the cap rates, right? Because your purchase price goes down, it's going to drop the cap rates. So it's going to make all of your properties much more valuable. So it's a little bit more nuanced, but I think you guys are all ready for it. And it's a lot of times I just hear, cap rate is too high or cap rate expansion, cap rate compression. But it's really important to realize like kind of where we are in the market and what people are actually buying. And then here's the other thing. Uh, you don't want to just make up numbers, right? So we use CoStar, RealPage. These are multi-billion-dollar companies, which, and of course they're not always right, but they have predictions on where they think cap rates are going to go. And they actually think we're going to be in the fours. So if we are anywhere in the fours, this is going to be like a home run grand slam. But that is way too aggressive for us. And I'd rather, we're looking to hit doubles, maybe a triple. Really focused on capital preservation and cash flow. And every once in a while we'll hit a grand slam if everything kind of aligns. But really the big reason is we don't want to lose money. And the fixed interest rate loan and the property being run super well, that really minimizes it, right? Of course, it's never zero, but if they've been able to run this property on like pennies for the past 2 years, I think just putting a little bit of rocket fuel on it really gives us a lot of great opportunity. See what else you got. Okay. Yeah, so Sonali asked a great question about interest rates. So it's funny. So I like to I like to make a lot of predictions with the caveat that I have that my predictions are just predictions, right? It just goes with their hypotheses, right? Based on what I think and what everyone is saying. So if you would have told me, I'd say maybe 2 weeks ago about interest rates, I'd say we're gonna get third month in a row, inflation going down, and interest rates are gonna drop probably in June. So as we all know, CPI and inflation went up slightly, right? And the job numbers look great. Uh, so in terms of dropping interest rates, the two things we're looking at is inflation right? We want that to drop. Because basically interest rates are a way to put the brakes on the economy, right? Right. It's too hot, you want to cool it down. It's like throwing water at it because it makes everything more expensive. So to drop interest rates, you need inflation to go down, or or you need unemployment to go up. So we've had this over the past like 8 months, right? It went from 9% to like three something, three something, right? But unemployment's been pretty good. It's like 3.4%, right? 3.4. That's under four is amazing, right? So I think it's been like historically like the longest time we've been over under 3%. So this is great. So they haven't felt the need to decrease interest rates because oh, what happened? Oh, hi Daniel. When stop. Okay. Okay. Sorry. I get distracted easily. So because inflation has been going down, we thought we would have decreased interest rates. But unemployment's been steady, right? It's been steady. So they had no reason to drop interest rates, right? And however, last month inflation went just up a tad. It was like down, 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 up a tad, right? And unemployment has been steady, steady. So they're not going to drop rates. So potentially they're saying maybe July for the first rate drop. They actually said that they're still planning on doing three rate drops for the year. Highly dubious. Highly dubious. I think two rate drops, I'd say, of 25 basis points. So 25 times two. So that would put us at 4.75, which actually historically four is like average. So that actually wouldn't be very much different than average. It's just we've gotten used to free money, unfortunately. So our whole worldview has changed when it comes to higher interest rates. So, like for example, I mentioned this last week, but my house is 2.37% mortgage, and at a 7%, I'd be paying an extra 7K per month for my house. And that doesn't go to equity, it just goes to the bank. $7,000. And this is why no one is selling their house because they can't afford the house that they live in. And if they, even if they got a crazy high number for their house, they have to buy another house at a crazy high number and the interest rate payments will be a lot higher. Okay, sorry, I got on a tangent. So Sonal, if interest rates continue to be high, we think highly doubtful. At some point, the brakes are going to cause unemployment to go up. And we're starting to see a little bit of the cracks in the labor market. A lot of people are saying that one of the reason unemployment is staying low is that people are getting jobs where a lot of the boomers are retiring and people are just taking those jobs. So it's not actually new jobs being created, but other people taking those old jobs and the people that are leaving those jobs retire. So if for some reason 5 years from now, the rate remains high, yes, we would probably do a cash out refi because our NOI is going to be just so much higher, right? And we'll be able to get another loan and give like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70% of people's money back. And then we'll just sit on it until it's a good time to sell. So we're very patient investors. And because there's so much meat on the bone, so much opportunity to do value add, the NOI will really help us out, even in like a couple years. Yeah. Uh, Yeah. So if the cap rate doesn't go down, highly, I tell people like if we're in the sixes, in terms of the cap rates, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble. Because right now, there's like no movement in terms of real estate, either a single family home or multifamily. It's causing a lot of issues, right? People are not starting families because they can't get a house. There's a lot of uh, pent up demand because of just the economy is just not moving, right? And we as a nation really need there to be movement, people getting paid, consumer spending, and all that stuff. So I think something's going to happen, and it might have to be on high unemployment. But slowly we're starting to see inflation kind of come down because people are stopping spending and really not buying as much stuff and going on vacations and stuff, right? So everything's becoming less hot. How long will the remodeling take? So it really will depend. So we'll remodel as quickly as there's demand. So as I mentioned, we're heading towards potential higher unemployment. So we'll renovate as much as the demand is there, and then we'll see, right? So I think we can do it as quickly as in 2 years, but we want to only remodel as much as we have people fill in, right? Because it's a pretty large jump between the renovated and the classic units. So we want there to be, you know, a good reason for us to do the renovations. Yeah. With syndications. Yeah. So 53. One more question after this one, if anyone wants to put anything in. Excuse me. 1031. So in terms of syndications, there's two ways to think of 1031. So you can 1031 into a syndication and you can 1031 out of a syndication. So 1031 into a syndication, there's two ways. There's called a TIC and DST. TIC is tenant in commons and DST is Delaware State Trust. So what that does, both of them, what they do is they take your active money and take it into and put it into like passive investments, but still in an active way. It's a little confusing, but that's why you need these specific structures because you're actually part of the deal, as opposed to just an LP passive investor. Now, almost always, I have seen people regret doing this. It's better just to pay the taxes. The taxes are only 20 to 25%. And because then you got to pay the taxes at some point. And if you keep doing it, you're having to find these unique deals because very few deals actually offer this. And typically the deals are very high fees because it's pretty expensive to actually manage this. So we haven't done it before. It's usually just better to take the tax hit unless it's a couple $1 million that you're able to offset. So we do not offer it. There's a few funds and syndication companies that do offer it, but we don't. Now, in terms of 1031 out of the deal, that is something that some of our deals offer, and you as an individual wouldn't be able to do 1031 into another deal. It would be all of us collectively. We take all of the Sunrise and Chandler proceeds and put it into another deal. So that is something that we would think about, but if you think about it, if we're doubling our value in in 5 years, we're really finding, an 80 to $100 million property. So that's pretty large and it'd be pretty hard to do. So if you have depreciation from other deals, you're able to offset some of your taxes. Most people don't end up paying that much in taxes anyways. I think we doctors tend to over emphasize the tax portion of it, but on the real estate side, it's really not that bad. Usually the 1031 due to the timing, it ends up not being the best deal because you either have to sell early, sell late, buy a property that maybe it doesn't make sense. So in my experience, you worry about taxes and then you optimize for that as opposed to other things. So. So I'm not sure what John is talking about, the GP split. We An interesting question, he might be talking about this, is how we separate the responsibilities. So a lot of times, and this is a really important question, so thanks, John, that you want to know when you're investing with someone, what is their actual role? Like, what are they doing? And there are people that do what is called feeder funds, allocator funds, where they will get a bunch of people together and invest in a deal. And that's kind of their role in the company. And we have people that do that for us. We've done that in the past. But our role is different. We are a co-GP or co-sponsor. So we are, and we have major decision rights, meaning we get to decide everything. We pick the debt, we sign on the loan, which is pretty rare. I don't think I know any other physician group that does that. We obviously helped find the property or worked out the details. We worked out things with the old seller. I visited the property multiple times. And so we'll be on weekly property management calls. We'll walk the property once a month. We have a full asset management team. So we help manage the property. So Sunrise is they kind of run the day to day, right? They're the main asset managers, but I think running the property is so important and so difficult right now that I think it's important to have two different teams, two different sets of eyes. And the way I kind of see it is that up until a point, if you have a couple doctors looking in, right? That's why I feel like almost resident teams are sometimes better than non-resident teams because you just have more eyes looking at something, right? And different levels of experience. And sometimes it's the people that have less experience, like a resident or a senior resident or an intern, that finds the important thing or asks the important question that maybe other people, like attending, may have glossed over. So we do co-GPs, we share on the responsibilities, we sign on the notes. And so very important that we are really running this ship. And we have the backstop of major decision rights. Yeah. So Ascent is in the middleman. This is our deal. We are running this together with Sunrise. Like this is our deal. There's no other way of getting into this deal. 100% of the equity other than the skin in the game is our deal. So this isn't really like a middleman. It's our deal. That's why you'll see our name everywhere. It's our deal, right? So you can't invest directly. They don't have their own investors. There's no other people with major decision rights. Yeah, no middleman. I know that's been an issue with some other deals where there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of co-GPs, and we don't believe in that. We don't want to have to argue with someone, and we don't want our power really diluted. And in the past, we've had to do things like switch out property managers, do loan modifications, and all of our deals we'll only do it if we're the major equity player and that we have major decision rights, because that's the only way we really feel like we can be advocate for our investors. Uh, okay. Last question. Oh, okay. John also asked if we don't hit our investment goal, send the money back, right? It's your money. If we don't hit our goal, which we have never not reached our goal, we would send the money back. We are about halfway. This is 3 times larger than Metro Park. It's about the size of Cabana and Kanto, which took, I want to say, like 10 weeks to close. It's a pretty large deal. So we're about 2.5 weeks in. We're about 50% full. Yeah, going fast. And during tax time is also uh, pretty difficult to raise a deal. But a lot of people in the industry are saying it's just when it's an opportune time to invest, it's just so hard to raise money because there's a lot of fear, right? There's a lot of fear of what's going to happen. But that's when we think actually are the best opportunities. And we're seeing it. We're seeing a ton of opportunities. We just don't know what the appetite is right now. And someone talked about distributions. So property's cash flowing, and distribution is going to be basically immediately. Uh, we need to do a month, right? A month of finances, accounting, um, and takes a week or two to get the logistics done. But so let's say 2 months after we close, and then monthly after that. So uh, our last four deals where we kind of pivoted, I'd say late 2022 to really focusing on cash flow as opposed to growing net worth. And all our last four deals have been distributing on a monthly basis, hitting pro forma, and yeah, every month, uh, as expected. We do monthly distributions. Okay, so distributions are monthly. That will go towards, so we think in total it's a 1.8 to 2x return. So that's including your distribution. So like you'll get anywhere from 30 to 40% of your return through distributions, and then the rest will be on sale, right? So this number will vary a little bit, but uh, and then remember our waterfall is like extremely investor friendly, because we're investors ourselves. We try to think of like who what we would want. So it's 8% pref, 8% pref, then return on capital, return of capital, and then 75, 25. And this is at the lowest tier, right? Uh, so that means we owe you per year 8%, right? Before we see a dollar. And say we hit that, which it'll take us a couple years to hit that number. And whatever we don't hit adds on to the next year. So like as John mentioned, in the first year, it's 3.5 to 5.5. So that means, we'll add on to that in the next year. So it'll be like 11 that we owe you next year. And it keeps going up until we actually meet that number. After we meet that number, we need to give you all of your money back. And I think this is really important. I don't always see this return of capital, but I think it's really important that not only do we give you a return, but we give you your money back. And then any money after that is 75, 25. So you get 75, I get 25. Yeah, so last question. I know I've said that a couple of times, but 3.5 to 5%, that's what we're expecting right now. So current interest rates, if things change drastically between now and when we close, which is a couple of weeks from now, but 3.5 to 5.5%, that's what we're modeling. Somewhere in the middle, around 4% with current rates. Because our interest rate is fixed, and we have 2 years of expenses to already book on, we should be able to hit that mark pretty well. So pretty expected, we really try to use conservative numbers when it comes to that stuff. Cool. So so if you were interested, deal is open, about 55% full. You can go to ascentequitygroup.com/deal to get more information. You also have you'll see my information on there. Text me, call me, email me. Happy to answer any questions. We physicians work very hard for our money. So have no fear in calling. I mean, even if you're not ready to invest and you want to talk about this kind of stuff, let me know. Because it's really important to us that we are good stewards of your money. So let me know, and we'll chat soon.